And good evening, everyone. ESS, Empire State Sports, proudly presents the Wise Guy Sports Talk Show. Your host for this evening, Joy Riom, Dave Bartlett, myself, Pete Goslaw, and our special guest, Kenny Cring. Welcome to the show, Kenny Cring, Mr. Cring.
Thank you.
Oh, I don't know where to start here. I mean, it's not you haven't done anything. So um, I will say this, Section 10 official, he's been in the game for years. I remember him parked behind me when I was playing first base for Salmon River and when playing baseball. He kept on talking to me behind me. I don't know if he was trying to confuse me or not, but that was many moons ago. But we'll get to that. We'll get to most of that during this hour, Kenny, because there's a lot of things that a lot of people don't know that you're involved with, and we're going to touch base on that here in this hour. But if you'd like to start it off for us, why don't you give yourself a little introduction?
Okay. I went to high school in Sackets Harbor. I lettered in 5 sports. They had basketball, baseball, football, volleyball, and track. And believe it or not, I got a scholarship for pole vaulting, if you can believe that. Okay. So I moved to Malone in 1966. I was cruising the streets looking for some place to play basketball. I found an outdoor court behind Flanders. Met Mike Hostler. He induced me into going to a CYO meeting, and that was the start of a good friendship and a long-standing fun event of mine that I've done now for 54 straight years. It started out as just an invitational tournament, and we played St. John's of Plattsburgh. They had varsity players. We had no varsity players. We lost in double overtime. So I had practiced about 3 months with my kids for one game. So I went home from that feeling kind of bad. We talked it over with the priest and said maybe we can do something with these other local parishes that were also in the tournament. By the way, St. John's of Plattsburgh was a team that won the tournament, but in the championship they beat Wayne Walbridge and St. John Bosco in triple overtime.
Oh, wow.
So that was the beginning of it all. We got 5 local churches, and we played each other one time. That was the first league schedule, and we had 4 games, and we finished second. Fort Covington beat us. Then we won in the playoffs. Well, that's where we started. And like I said, 1966. And then 10 years later, Bob Purcell came to me. He had been running the Malone Adult League and asked me if I wanted to take that over. And I did, stupidly, I guess. But actually, I enjoyed that very, very much. And I've been running that for 44 years. And I've got a story about you, Joey. Our scorekeeper was Bob Letterly at the time. And Joey was setting a record for assists one night. I remember Bob was awful pumped up about this. It was going to be a new record. He got up to 23 assists and then got to 24, which was a new record. And he had a chance for a 25th assist. And he passed the ball to Jeff White, and Jeff blew the layup.
That story amazes me because I've never seen Joey not shoot. So,
yeah, right? Joey passed?
Passing, yeah. I just can't.
Wow.
You cannot say that about this guy. He and Mike he and Mike Martin are probably two least selfish guys in the whole league that ever since has been. They always look for the open man. It's fun to pick on him, I know, but in all honesty, he's a great assist man. Okay, so now speaking about the adult league and Bob Letterly, Bob passed away in 2013, and the adult league guys, they came to me and said, we'd like to do something in Bob's memory. So at that time, we established a scholarship fund. And since then, I believe it's $15,000 that we have passed out. They've helped raise the funds every year, the adult league has. And this year, we passed out over $3,000. So
That's amazing.
kind of proud of that. Yeah, proud of that and proud of my
I just got a
my
bad
league.
connection.
Steps forward. Was it me that's got the bad one?
No, that's me. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Well,
Yeah, go ahead.
well, I was just going to say, Kenny, because I didn't know if we were connected, but I was just going to say, that's an amazing amount of money that you guys have raised in Bob's name in just a 6-7 year period. That's such a great testament to his name, because I know Pete and Dave will speak or join me in saying that Bob was so appreciated but underappreciated.
Yeah.
And we always said, what would the Malone League be without this guy? And we ended up finding out. And I know you've replaced him in a sense, but you don't replace a man like Bob. I never seen a man be able to run a score clock and keep stats for two teams the way he did. It was just amazing, his system and how he did things.
And then read a book on thermodynamics during the timeouts.
Yeah.
He didn't
Absolutely
forget.
right.
He didn't forget anything either. He knew his numbers. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
All three of us have played up there, and it's.
Oh, yeah.
So he really is an amazing was an amazing man.
Yeah. Just while we're on that subject, the adult league said to raise the money for C1. This year I didn't get many applications, so I reached out to the local coaches who had played while Bob was keeping stats. And that's Joey and Nate Bilo and Tim LeMay, Ryan Childs, Wilbur Bailey. He only needs one name.
Yeah.
And I asked them for the name of one of their players who either could use the money or would appreciate it and whatever. And so I ended up building out another $5,000 or $500 for those guys. You guys got any questions? I've got lots of stuff.
I'm sure you do, Kenny. I was just making notes today on what I know of you, and there's a lot of things that's going to lead up to talking about the Lions also that a lot of people don't know about. But no, I won't. You go ahead. This is your hour. You talk as long as you want.
Okay. I watched Jerry Welch's interview, and I've known Jerry probably longer than any other coach. I was a JV official at Messina one night. While Jerry was still coaching at the high school level. And being the JV official, I had showered first and was in a rush because you want to get out and watch the varsity game. And Messina had a team that year. And Jerry brought his team back into the locker room just as I was coming out and said a prayer. He had his guys, they all knelt down and among me, and he didn't pray to win. He prayed for nobody to get hurt, for us not to embarrass ourselves, our parents, the school, for us to respect the other team and the officials, and to go out and have fun. And that was the extent of his prayer. I mean, when he started, I was a little taken aback because of the public school prayer thing, but it wasn't a prayer of anything except what anybody would say. That's a good person. Jerry obviously is a very good person.
Yes, he is.
That doesn't surprise me one bit that would be, yeah, something that Coach Welch would do.
Yeah, and then speaking of him, I was doing a basketball game in Saranac Lake when they were still part of Section 10, and Timmy Walsh was playing, and it was 3 overtime game, and in the third overtime, Saranac Lake scored. Messina called a timeout, and I'm working with Donnie Gagne, or Gagnon, I guess it's the way that they pronounced it then, and get ready to start or restart the game, and Timmy's going to inbound the ball. So I get next to him, I'm ready to hand him the ball. He looks at me and he says, "Isn't this fun?" And I gave him the ball. Game went on. I related that story to Jerry Welch a couple years later, how Timmy had said that in a 3 overtime game. He said, "You know, Kenny, coach lose sight of that. We're so hell-bent on winning that we lose sight of the fact that it's supposed to be fun for the players."
Right.
And I thought that was a nice comment, again, to come from a man who I respect so much as Jerry.
Yeah.
He also mentioned Sam Molnar. Sam used to be the athletic director at Potsdam State. Sam recruited me, actually, to go there. And I was not a bad athlete before my body went bad on me. But Sam owned a house at 80 Main Street, right there in the village. It's a historic place now. I don't know if it's because Sam lived there or what, but my roommates were athletes. It was really kind of neat. Jack Charlo, Jim Burns, I'm drawing a blank here. Oh, Barney DeShays, who was Jim DeShays' uncle, and Dick Harmer. Those are my 4 roommates, and it was a good bunch. I stayed there for one whole half a year. I had started at Manhattan College, and then I transferred up to Potsdam State, where I finally got my degree. I also had as a teacher at Potsdam, Dr. John Maxey, who, of course, Maxey Hall is named after. And I can remember him telling us, "I'm 68 years old and I've still got all my own teeth. And you know why? Because I use baking soda to brush my teeth." So, just a little bit of history there.
You got more, Mr. Cring?
Oh, where do you want to start? I would love to, later on, I'll ask you guys to throw the name and I'll tell you a story about him. But Glenn was probably one of my heroes as an official. And when I was a JV official, I worked often with him and with Dutch Michelle. And Glenn had some great stories. I used to sell beers to take orders on the way home from a game. And Glenn said it would get to be quite late. So sometimes I'd fall asleep in the car while Dutch was taking the orders inside, and he'd come out and scold me for falling asleep. Glenn says, one night he didn't scold me. He says, but I woke up in his garage. He parked the car there. Glenn says, I had to get out and walk home.
That's funny.
Glenn tells a great story. I wasn't there at the time, but Donnie Parks was coaching against Bruxton. This was in St. Regis Falls. And Glenn and Gene Dow were working the game. And it came right down to the wire. Bruxton had the possession at the end. They were down 1 point. They threw the ball in. Now, Glenn and Gene had already talked about we're going to get the clock and make sure that, the shot goes up before time expires. It was getting real close at the end of the game. So, kid from Brushton gets the ball. He launches one. Nothing but net. Horn goes, actually while it was in the air, and goes through the basket. So, Glenn and Gene head into the locker room. Donnie Parks follows him in. Glenn. Glenn says, Donnie, we both had it. Chops away, time is good. Donnie says, what about the travel? He said the kid walked about 6 feet. So Glenn says, there's nothing we can do about that. He says, Donnie Parks says, what do I tell my kids? Glenn says, tell them they got screwed.
Oh, man.
Pretty much point blank. That's what
Yeah.
Glenn was.
Oh, he had the worst mechanics of anybody you ever want to see, but the best judgment, the best game judgment, the best game management. We were in Edwards Knox one night. Now I don't know if you know that, Jim, or not. That was it was Russell before they became Edwards Knox, and one half of the gym was like a stage. They all sat up on the stage, and they could really give it to you. And so, anyways, the free throw line was the over and back line. So you could actually bounce the ball into your teammate. If he bounced it back to you, it was over and back.
Wow.
anyways,
Free throw line.
That's a small gym.
So one night we're there, and there's a timeout, and I forget who was coaching at the time, but he says, my kids say they're getting hit out there. And Glenn says, we're all getting hit. No room. So,
I got a Glenn
time.
Bissell story. He was a teacher, of course. Everybody knows he was a teacher at Salmon River, and I was in his class one year, and I'm not kidding you. I don't know what period it was. It probably was just after lunch because I was starting to nod off, and Glenn had this big old lefty. He's a lefty.
Yeah.
And I was in the back row near the windows, and he picked up an eraser that was full of dust, chalk dust, and he whipped that thing sideways and took me right in the head. And that's all I saw was a puff of chalk. So that's my Glenn Bissell story. Oh yeah, I never slept after that. I'll tell you that right now.
He told me more stories. He told me that one day it must have been like spring fever because all the kids are looking out the window. So he gets up, walks around in the courtyard right next to his classroom, and taught the class
From outside the window.
That sounds something like Glenn would do.
Yeah. He had a Swedish kid there one time. I used to know the kid's name, but things to me, killing brain cells and so forth. But the Swedish kid got like a 90 on a quiz, and a couple other guys failed it. The parent kind of upset, and they went to Glenn. Glenn says, "What about this kid here? Who got a 90?" He says, "Oh," Glenn says, "I remember I taught classes." So they didn't have anything to say. Glenn and I used to have a lot of fun. One night we were at Norwood, and Sue Bullish was the coach. She's a pretty good coach, by the way. And she didn't like a few calls that were going down. So finally she's chirping at Glenn, and Glenn goes by her and he says, "Pipe down, you're giving me a headache." And she says, "I'm giving you a headache." So Glenn calls a technical foul, and then I tell him, "All right, we got one free throw. That's all it was in girls at the time, girls coaches. One free throw at this end. And I pointed to the wrong end of the gym. And she says in a very quiet voice, "You got that wrong too." Which reminds me, Joey. Let me see.
Uh-oh.
This was a night. I think JJ might have been coaching then because it was Sandy was coaching for Messina, and I'm working with Dick Bennett, and there's a ball's headed out of bounds, and it's a Salmon River kid goes after the ball and flings it back as he's going out of bounds, but he's still in bounds. He catches the ball in the air, flings it back. St. Lawrence player just deflects it, and I catch the deflection. So I blow a whistle and point towards the way Salmon's going. I point towards green, to the left. Well, Dick comes in, blowing a whistle, tweet, tweet, tweet. Kenny. He said, there was a deflection on that. I said, Dick, I got it. Yeah, he says, well, now that I'm together, we got to sell this call. So he stamps his foot down, green, and he points to the right end of the gym, which was the wrong direction. I said, Dick, thanks for the help. Going the other way.
Thanks for the help.
Now you're more confused than when you started. Yeah.
Yep.
Hey,
Oh,
so, Mr. Cring, I got to ask you a question.
fire away.
All right. So, Mr. Bissell.
Yep.
How did it come about that the team sportsmanship award was named after Glenn?
At a basketball meeting, we wanted to do something to honor the man. And so we came up with the sportsmanship award, and we called it the Glenn Bissell Sportsmanship Award. Just the way the girls did the same thing with Eddie Bush. They wanted to honor Eddie. Eddie and I were doing a game at Potsdam State. The ball goes out in the hall, and apparently it must have been one of those banging off the walls down the hallway. And Eddie, it's quite a time for him, comes back in to the gym. We're all there waiting, and Eddie comes in, and as he enters the gym, he says, I went out for a ham sandwich. Oh.
Well,
Let me see.
hey, can I make an announcement
Can you make an announcement? I guess so.
on your behalf?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so Mr. Cring sent me a letter this afternoon, and we'd like to congratulate him on being in the initial class to go into the Sackett's Harbor Sports Hall of Fame.
Awesome.
And unfortunately, the ceremony won't be able to take place this year. It would have already happened last June, but he said it's going to happen again next year. But Mr. Cring, that's awesome news, and we're so happy for you to be in that initial class
sir.
for the first Hall of Fame.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, Ken.
Congratulations. Well deserved.
Thank you. I loved sports in high school. I had a lot of fun. It seems funny to be honored for something you enjoyed doing. I enjoyed that more than obviously academics, but
Didn't we all?
Didn't we all? Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
yeah. We were a small school, and whatever sport there was available at the time, I was into it. So, okay, let me see here. Roger Ducharme, longtime coach at Canton, soccer coach, and JV basketball coach. And I've often felt that Roger was responsible for giving Hooley some good teams, because Roger had a way of, he played everybody. If he had 10 kids, he'd play the first 5, he'd play the next 5. And if it was ever turn it was when the game was on the line, if it was their turn to play, they played, whether they were the second 5 or the first 5. And I think giving that many kids that much court time could do nothing but help the program. I was fortunate enough in 1988 to work a state championship in soccer, and Canton was there as the I think it was the B school. Anyways, they ended up tying for the state championship. They were declared co-champs. And I can remember Roger talking to his kids, and he said, keep your heads up, boys. They didn't take anything away from us. They didn't beat us. You know, you can be proud of what you did. Now we're going to fast forward a year to 1989, and Roger's team won the sportsmanship award in soccer. And as we're going into the award meeting, he said to me, Kenny, you know something? This award means more to me than any championship I've ever won. So that, again, says a lot about coaches, sportsmanship, and where sportsmanship starts. Okay. What else do you want to, you can see the picture behind my left shoulder? To the shoulder. It's up this way. Anyways, that's a picture of Funny Side. In 2003, he won the Kentucky Derby.
Oh yeah.
His sister, part owners of him, and they're just happy to get there. They had no idea, no plans of winning. And when he won that, you know, of course, the whole northern New York went nuts. And then he won the Preakness going away. And then they had a sloppy, muddy track for the Belmont. And he finished third. So he didn't make the Triple Crown. But I think he could have if things had been different at the Belmont. That's just a little side note.
Well, and another side note to that, I was living in Louisville, Kentucky at the time. And, yeah, so when this horse was, you know, won the Kentucky Derby, I'm telling all my friends, hey, I know where that is. That's near where I'm from.
Yeah. Did you bet any money on him?
No, unfortunately, no.
They couldn't afford limos and stuff, so they used a school bus.
Nice.
And on the way to the Kentucky Derby, the driver laid down the law, you know. Everybody sit still, remain seated, no standing while the bus is moving, this and that. Wait till I come to a complete stop and so forth. So as I got up, he said, do you want us to place a bet for you? And he says, I don't care. So they put $20 down. And of course, I think it paid $160. And they went out and gave the driver $160 as they're heading on the way back. And he says, you guys can party all you want. He says, I don't care, he says. They actually told them they could pee in the aisle if they wanted to.
They probably did.
No. Oh, let's see.
Wasn't that bad of a trip.
Yeah. You can't talk about officiating without talking. Well, I was a signer for 10 years for basketball and 11 years for baseball and softball. But there are some wonderful guys that I got to know or got to head along. One was Jude Kaya, who actually ended up in Iowa, and he ended in the Iowa State Hall of Fame for officials. He was refereeing at the same time my son Andy broke in. And two other guys at that time, they're kind of like favorite projects of mine, were Matt Caulfield and Robbie Brown. And at first I had doubts about Rob because he didn't seem to catch on as fast as Matt did. But once he got it, he's now one of our top officials, as is Matt. James Lucky was another guy I signed for. And they had a preferred officials within the games, and they also can blackball somebody. Freddie McQueer, there's another story, but Freddie me Lucky on his non-preferred list. I went to Freddie. I said, Freddie, I said, how can you have Jamie Lucky on the non-preferred list? Probably one of our top 5 officials. This is when Jamie was just coming up through the ranks, but he just zoomed right to the top. And Freddie says, well, I like him, but my kids aren't comfortable with him. I said, okay, so you won't have him. He obviously worked any place else you want to do, just about.
Jamie, I've got a Jamie Lucky story, Coach, or Kenny.
Yeah.
Javenville always told me this one, and so Jamie's made the big time now, and he's working in the ACC, and he's working D1, and he's got Syracuse Georgetown on a Sunday afternoon, and he came home. And he came home for Friday and Saturday night to spend the weekend with the family before driving back down to Syracuse for the game with Georgetown on Sunday. And as the story goes, from what I hear, is they got into it on Saturday night, and Jamie kept saying, "Hey boys, I got to get home. I got to get some sleep." You'll be fine. He goes, "I'm not working Hammond Morristown tomorrow, boys. I got Syracuse Georgetown."
Oh, that's a good one.
Oh boy. Well, Freddie McQueer has the quickest comebacks I've ever heard. He got down to the States one year. Now, Mark Hall used to be the coach at Clifton Fine, Star Lake, and did not have a good record. And of course, Freddie had a couple tall guys, and what's his name? Mike Roberts was a point guard, and they won the first game, so they're in the championship. So Freddie says to Mark Hall, he says, "Mark," he says, "I want you to sit where I can find you in case I need you, in case I need your help." And Mark says, "Well, what would you need my help for?" Freddie says, "I've never had to coach from behind all year, so." Joey, I got another story about one of your kids. We were at Salmon River, and the Pike kid had a free throw, and he swished it, but before the ball went in, he stepped over the line, maybe 1 or 2 steps, I don't know. He didn't run into the basket or anything. Made the shot. I ignored it. Joe Binion calls timeout. Joe says, "Kenny," he says, "did you miss that?" And I said, "Miss what?" He says, "That kid going over the line." I said, "According to you, I've missed everything tonight." So
Yeah,
by the way,
we got Joe coming on in a few weeks.
oh, he got into refereeing, and he became a very good official. Very good.
I would have never thought that would
No.
happen, Kenny. And I'm telling you right now, had he not left officiating, he would be representing us in states on a regular basis. He was that good.
Yes, he was. Yes, he was. Exactly. Yep. Let's see. Let's talk about baseball. I got to talk about, first of all, Ricky Bear. Rick was having his last home game, and I knew that. I was born in Harrisville, too, and I used to keep track of Harrisville, what was going on. And at the time, Tom McCauley was the assigner. So I said, "Tom, can you send Steve Andrews and I to Harrisville for Bear's last game?" He said, "Sure, I'll take care of it." So we get assigned there. And we go do the game, tell Rick, how happy we are to have this game, last game, and so forth. And he's all happy too. The game went on, he won, and so forth. Well, the next week, I started. He's got to travel to Chateauguay. Who does Tom McCall in there with Steve Andrews and myself? So as we're walking across the field toward him, he says, geez, he says, you guys really want to be sure I'm gone, don't you? So, Steve Andrews, I could talk about him for an hour by himself.
I think we all could.
John,
Yeah, we could.
Yeah, we all have
Not
Steve
all good.
Andrews. We all have Steve. Yeah, we all have Steve Andrews stories. That's for sure.
Sandy Cook yelled at him one night. Steve, going to bed, Dad. Yeah, and anyways, it's Tahanica's last game. Now this time I'm the assigner. This was earlier than Bear. And Tahanika, I said, this is your last game. Who would you like on it? And he said, well, I like Andrews and Horan. I said, okay, I can do that. Well, Patterson calls me and he says, look, that's Tahanika's last game. Any way I could get on it? And I said, well, I've already got it assigned, but if you want to go, I'll go with you. We'll do a four-man. We just won't charge. Patterson says, I'm good with that. So we go down and do a four-man game. And as we leave Hewelton, these guys start giving me directions. And I have never driven to a game from Canton that took a half hour to get there. It took 2.5 hours to get there.
There weren't any stops on the way, were there?
There weren't any, but I remember a lot of back roads.
Okay.
Morley, and there's places I'd never been before. I said, as long as you guys know where we are, this will be good. I mentioned Wilbur Bailey earlier. I got to tell a story about him. We were in the Sportsman Club. That's a surprise. Wilbur used to like drinking gin mixed with grapefruit. And I didn't think that was very good, but I'm standing on Wilbur's left, and I don't forget who was on his right, but he was paying a lot of attention to whoever was on the right. So I just take a sip of his drink, and I said, boy, that's I drank the force of it. And Wilbur drains it. He says, I have another one. So same thing happens twice, but 3 times. I drink 3/4 of this. About the time he gets the 4th one, he says, boy, those are going down easy tonight. He catches me with the 4th one. A Wilbur Bailey headlock. Another Wilbur Bailey, there's a guy in there. They used to call him the Admiral. His name was Dewey, Bill Dewey. And one night I stopped, and he starts calling me Wilbur. He's talking to me, and after about 5 minutes, it dawns on him. He says, you ain't Wilbur. I says, sure I am. He says, no, you're not. So we got that ironed out. About 2 weeks later, I stopped. Here's Bill Dewey sitting there, Admiral Dewey. I says, hi, Mr. Dewey. He says, I'm Bailey. This other guy said at the bar, I said, no. I said, yes, I am. He says, no, you ain't. I'm Wilbur's father, and you ain't Wilbur. I said, buy my father a drink. Oh, man.
Nice.
Yeah. Ricky Alfeld.
Rick.
Rick, everybody's got a Rick Alfeld.
One night I did a soccer game at St. Lawrence, and I had left my keys on the scores table. And after the game, Mark Pepin, who had worked with me, and we sat and visited for 10 or 15 minutes. Well, Pete Hayes, who was AD at St. Lawrence at the time, he clears the soccer field and the tables and stuff. And my car keys were on it. So I go over and look for my keys. They're not there. So I talked Pepin into giving me a ride to Messina because we had a Section 10 meeting, and as an assigner, I had to be there. So I called Ricky. I said, Rick, what are you doing? He said, nothing. I'm in my pajamas. I said, okay, never mind. He said, what do you need? I said, Ricky, I'm all set. Don't worry about it. Kenny, what do you need? So I told him the story. Pete Hayes had brought my keys to the school at Messina. So I said, I need a ride to St. Lawrence Central. My car's there, and I'm here with my keys. He says, I'll be right there. So he shows up in his pajamas in his car, and he gives me a ride back to Messina. And I said, Ricky, I said, this is awful nice. And I said, this is something that I would do. And he said, Kenny, it's all part of the fraternity, isn't it? And I said, yeah, you got that right. I got more Ricky Alpha stories, but those are the best ones. That was the best one.
I have a lot of Ricky Offelt stories too, but I can't tell them.
There isn't a coach in the North, a coach or a player in the North Country that doesn't have a Rick
I
Offel
know.
story.
No doubt, no doubt.
Let's see. Want to throw out some names and see if I can give you a story on them?
Oh, you want us to throw out a name?
Yeah.
Oh.
Irv McLaren. Irv McLaren.
Irv McLaren. He was. Let me see. That was when I just became a varsity official, and Harrisville was playing at Salmon, and the ball went up and it bounced toward the corner, and a Harrisville kid actually shoved the Salmon River kid toward the basket and got the rebound. And for some reason, I choked on the whistle, didn't blow it, and Irv didn't mince any words with me. he let me have it, and I deserved it.
Kenny, before this is over, I really want to talk about your what you do for the Lions Club organization, because it is amazing. When I used to go up to the fair, I always went to your booth, and you were always there to give me a chuckle and a hi. And so, if you would tell us just a little bit about the Lions Club and what you do there.
Well, been the secretary treasurer for 20 years, and I used to stand until the last couple of years, but I used to love doing that. It was a great way. It's 1 week that you could just, be in one place and see more friends, more people you knew. Hal Oney made it every year. Jerry Horahan, Jerry and Shirley, they always came along. Just to name a few. And we use the money for people who need eyeglasses or hearing aids, or people that have had fires and been burned out. We started a program about 4 years ago called Random Acts of Kindness. And each line member is given a $50 bill. And this is usually before Christmas, and they're told they can't spend it on themselves. They have to give it away to somebody that they think needs it. And the response has been great. And the Lions members tell me it's one of the nicest things that we do. It lets them have a little bit of ownership of saying where some of our funds go, instead of the board of directors doing it all the time. Actually, that's where I met my late wife too. She was working there, and took her home from there, and then ended up getting married. But Lions, we do scholarships every year. It's a pretty tight knit bunch of guys. Members are like Steve Schaefer, Wayne Walberts. We got those two guys in there. Eileen Kilcullen, Dave Sauter, Betty Miller, Teresa Beja, Harry and Martha Gardner, Jamie Durant, he's our newest member, George McLaughlin. If I miss somebody, they're going to shoot me, but let me see. Josh Russell, Evan McGibbon, Dwayne Goslaw. And I think that's it. We've got 16 members. We're a small group, but we're a very, community-minded group. I thank you for bringing that up.
No, my pleasure. Every year we make a point of when I was up there of going to the Lions. I pass all the rest of them. I said, I know where I'm going. And I'm going to the Lions Club. I knew that my money there was going to a good cause, and that's the reason why we went there. And to see your smiling face, of course.
Oh, thank you, I think. Okay. Give me another name, boys.
Well, one thing I want to bring up. Sorry, Joe. One thing I want to bring up, and this is we've got the boys high school state playoffs back in Glens Falls. We missed it this past year because of this whole thing going on. But one of the things it's kind of an iconic thing to me. And I don't even know the name of the bar. It's the place that says Bar Food. and your corner stool right there. I mean, I can't start off the weekend without walking into that place and Mr. Kenny Cring's corner stool at the bar. I mean, so are we going to be blessed with that next year? Hopefully.
I don't know. It all depends. I've got neuropathy in both feet, and it's harder than hell for me to walk now. If it wasn't for that, I'd still be officiating. I love that so much. I've made so many friends down there. I don't know if you ever met the Bradish boys, Mike Bradish, Tom Bradish. They own a golf course in Branningham, and when they have a shotgun start, it's a shotgun start. Yeah, he does. Fire a shotgun in the air, and everybody starts playing golf.
We were waiting for that at your tournament, Joe.
Yeah. I'll remember that.
That'd be great. Shotgun start. See, you just say it up in the air.
Mr. Cring, I'll toss you a name because I'm actually surprised you haven't mentioned him yet. Mr. Petty, Don Petty.
Oh my God!
Good name. Good name.
How long can I talk about him?
You got 10 minutes.
He calls me one night. He says, Kenny, at the time he had a Canton game, and he says, I don't think Bill Porter's going to be there. I said, why not? He says, his wife's overdue. They took her to the hospital, and they're going to seduce her.
Seduce her?
I said, Donnie, you mean induce? He says, induce, seduce. What's the difference? I said about 9 months. Now, Kate Porter becomes a basketball official after this. And Kate is at the girls' meeting, and this is when she had the second boy, who had incidentally became a hell of an athlete. But she says, Ricky asked the question. He says, did they have to seduce her for that one? She said, yes, they had to seduce me again.
Yeah. That's funny.
Funny.
And who's the state basketball chairman? Been for years. He's from Glens Falls.
It's not coming.
Anyways, all right. Then the name's not important, but I go down and go to the basketball game, and he's there, and he calls me over by my name, Kenny. He says, "Come here." He says, "How are you?" And I said, "Good." I said, "How can you remember my name? You know, all the people he meets." he says, I never forget a friend of Don Petty's. I says, oh yeah? He says, yeah. He says, I was at his funeral. By the way, I spoke at Donnie's funeral, and that's one of the stories that I told, which is the true story. And he says, I just told that story to a friend just last week. So
Is it Bob Mayo?
no.
No.
It'll come
Good
to me
guess.
as soon as we go off the air. Anyways, there's another story about Patty that almost all the games got canceled one night. And Donnie was coming home from Rome. And his game was in Morristown. And he says, Kenny, let me know as soon as you can if my game is canceled. So that was the one game that they didn't cancel that night. Well, Joyce found out. So Donnie gets home. His suitcases are packed right out inside the door. And Joyce tells him, get out, don't come back. Donnie went to the St. Lawrence Inn for 3 days, 3 nights. Speaking of Donnie Petty, we're at the St. Lawrence Inn one night, and Pete murmurs at the end of the bar where it was his usual spot, and Pete went into the bathroom just as somebody comes out of the kitchen with a plate full of chicken wings. So Petty says to Steve Andrews, he says, Steve, go help yourself. Those are bar wings. Steve just is reaching for one when Pete comes out. He yells, Andrews, what the hell do you think you're doing? Donnie wasn't laughing at all.
Well, Mr. Cring, we've got about 5 minutes left, and I know you've spoken here for pretty much all this show, and I'm sure you could speak for another 2 hours, but I want to lead this off because I'm pretty sure Pete and Dave are going to want to say something too before we're done. I want to thank you. You've been an important person in my life. You have been at every one of my golf tournaments. You before you quit officiating would come and ref my alumni nights for free. And you were a big part. You were on my wall behind me. I don't know, it really can't see it, but you were on my wall behind me because with every one of those 5 Glenn Bissell Sportsmanship Awards that I won with my team, you were in those photos. And then I can't thank you enough for 25 years. I played in the Malone Adult League, and I enjoyed every minute of that. You gave me and Pete and Dave an opportunity to be with buddies of ours. And I'm pretty, I don't remember playing against Pete and Dave, but I know that they appreciated it the same way that I did. I got to be with 7, 8, 9 good buddies once a week playing the sport that I love because of you. And the last thing I want to say is I won't forget just this past February, you allowing me to come out of retirement. I hadn't played in the Young Guys League for 10 years. And I came out of retirement to play with all my old players and my son. And that was a special night. And there you were sitting there waiting for me to get there to watch an old fart play a game of basketball. And I won't forget that. So you've been a very important person to me, Kenny. And I can't, and I speak for not just me, I speak for everybody in Section 10, how important and what a great man you are and what you've done for the communities that you live in all of the North Country. And I can't thank you enough.
Absolutely.
And I want to say that, I want to echo Joey's sentiment about the Malone Adult League. I had some really fun years playing in the Malone Adult League with a couple of different teams. But the thing that I want to say is that, as a high school basketball player at Salmon River, I was very intense, and I didn't always get along with the referees. But anytime that I saw that you were going to referee one of our games, I always felt good about that. And that's not any BS. That's not blowing any smoke. I really did. There were a few referees that I really respected and that I really enjoyed having calling a game that I was part of, and you were one of them. And again, also, seeing you in Glens Falls, that's always a good thing. So I want to thank you for your years of everything you've done for North Country sports. It's just great.
I guess it's my turn.
Thank you.
I was a fill-in on-call guy for the adult league up in Malone, so I played as a fill-in on a couple teams. But the most I remember about you, Kenny, is you umpired my baseball games, a lot of them at Sand River, and you were always behind me when I was at first base. Always had a kind word to say about something. Never screwed up a call. My father said you hit the right guy out there on the field tonight, doing the bases, and I've always admired you from afar. I really did. Always been a gentleman and a true Section 10 official. I want to thank you very much.
Well, I want to thank you for the thanks. I always had the philosophy the game was for the kids. You let them play. You call what had to be called, but you also could pass on the slight stuff because that didn't have a bearing on the game. So
Perfect.
tried to give, yeah. The last thing you want to do is take the good players out, and that's what some guys do is overcall the game, and then they end up with second string players out there, and then the game deteriorates. So thank you guys. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it very much.
It's been a pleasure, Kenny.
Absolute pleasure.
Been our pleasure. Kenny.
Okay.
All right,
Bye, guys.
everybody. That's going to be it here for ESS, Empire State Sports, and the Wise Guys Sports Talk Show. Our host, Joey Ream, Dave Bartlett, myself, and our special guest, Mr. Kenny Cring. Thank you very much, Mr. Kenny Cring. Good night, everybody, and stay safe.
Good night.